Legendary Pokemon have ranged from ethereal deity to funny little fella. So how would each one stack up against each other in a race to destroy the world? Kazente can set off every volcano on the planet just from barking. Zeraora can move at 270,000 miles an hour. Hoopa can spawn an infinite amount of legendary Pokemon and make them enraged. Meanwhile, Terrapagos gets softlocked being flipped on its back. Magearna, objectively speaking, is nothing more than a medieval Buzz Lightyear. And Jirachi, he can't even create objects with its wishes. It just teleports the thing you want from somewhere else. A guy is an action replay Abra. There really are levels to this game, so I'm ranking every legendary and mythical Pokemon by destructive power. And if that's the topic, we all know who's coming last. Weighing in at 10% of the smallest dumbbell you'll find on any gym rack, Cosmog. Last place, undisputed. The guy, he's a bit of carry-on luggage. You know, growing up around the Mewtwo's and the Groudons, never would have thought in my day I could witness a legendary Pokemon that I would be the odds-on heavy favorite for in a fight against. And I'm talking about me back then too, so me 6 years old in 2003, let alone one I could consume with zero struggle. Manaphy and Pheon, they are good swimmers, I hope so, I think. But aside from the potential mean breaststroke on the pair of them, they have the very useless ability, at least for this topic, the power to bond with anyone for their own good. That power is needed though, because Manaphy is very susceptible to a throttling. Got an attachment installed on its head to spin him around, wind him up like a rat in a sock to bash against your kitchen side. If Manaphy was somehow of any danger to you, with good enough form, you could just string up the lower half of him to a set of weights and rip him in half doing a tricep pushdown. And Pheon, I don't even care, no ratings. The guy's a Nepo baby love disc. Aye, just wee shame, and Skyform or not, I don't think he even has any destruction in him. He exists to make the grass greener. A sentient plushie laced with plant fertilizer, may be destructive towards small children who've somehow managed to crack the code on how the bleach lid comes off, yet not figured out bleach will kill them, but not destructive to anything too tangible. Cosmoem should be as non-destructive as Cosmog, maybe even less so, just because he's in like stasis. I've only got this one a bit higher up, because at a weight of near enough a Britonian ton, intentionally or not, there's got to be a fair amount of destructive power potential there. I'm aware he's motionless in stasis, the Kakuna of legendary pocket creatures, but if he sleepwalks a bit, gets a harsh sleep paralysis sesh, and starts flipping out, Cosmoem is going to be causing heavy damage. I always forget Kubfu is legendary. I always go straight to the assumption the pre-evolved ones are like their own little thing. A last-ditch effort, perhaps, in my own mentality to maintain the prestige of the legendary Pokemon title. So, we're talking about destructive power, yeah? How quickly they'd end the world or whatever I decide to call itself. But I won't waste your time here. We've got entities that can destroy the fabric of space. Kubfu wouldn't even destroy the fabric of my nan's carpet. Individually, Meltan, it's not going to get much done, aside from eating scrap metal. An absolute financial nightmare creature for those whose houses have fog lights. But if it is meant to be molten steel, in a literal enough sense though, the temperature he's walking at would have some destructive power wherever it may roam. But when he's such a small size, I can't imagine him getting any real damage done. Like how Ditto is theorized to be a failed Mew clone. Meltan's like if they failed to make a Ditto clone. Like a Ditto whose only transformation makes him small and chrome. Meloetta, she's just a bard. No destructive capabilities on her. It could manipulate the feelings of the stronger legendaries to make them angry enough to destroy the world. So maybe you could argue Meloetta is like a second-hand, very destructive Pokemon. But the event you catch it in, isn't it in like, it's like a back alley bar down Castelia City. Meloetta wouldn't even crack the top 5 of the most destructive people in a standard bar. I don't know what Magearna is really doing either. Only way I could see it being relevant here is if the creator installed some kind of defense mechanism for the child of the king he gifted it to. Maybe this scientist, he wasn't the man we thought he was, lacing that toy with a sinister self-destruct sequence for the king to open up there. Oh yeah, Magearna, up the right, it's all coming together, and even so, a village level threat at the most. 500 years ago, if anything, a village would burn down purely from the angry mob who would destroy this sinful creation for its anti-Christian witchcraft. Magearna is irrelevant. I want to know the destructive power of the man behind Magearna's creation. The man who cracked the science behind Toy Story while being well over 300 years away from even knowing dinosaurs were real. See, we know who Rex is, but a T-Rex? Nah, you're living in a fantasy land. What can Calyrex even do? King of bountiful harvests? Right, so he's the exact opposite of what I'm looking for here. The only way Calyrex has caused any kind of destruction if he literally was the King of England at one point and was the one to give the green light on all the colonizers. Actually, you know what? Magina's creator, he might have a little present for you there. Calyrex, old King of England and that. He's made you this marvel in technology, the motorized vehicle powered by these keys. Now, what you're gonna do is put him in that hole, give him a real good twist on the ignition there, real hard. You'll hear a good bang when it works. Mars Shadow on its own hasn't got much punching power to be destroying anything more than our one bed apartment. Although, the thing is, it depends on how far its ability to mimic others' powers can really go. Because if it can slip into the shadow of a Regigigas, can he suddenly just push Africa somewhere? If he slipped into Regidrago's shadow, who is said to already have the power of every dragon Pokemon, would Mars Shadow then too gain the power of every dragon Pokemon? So it's hard to say its potential really. But for now, he's just a bit of a ghoul lurking in your walls. He's a building level threat. The power caps at Luigi's mansion. Ogerpon likely doesn't have too much going on for it here. I reckon it could at least take the singular town existing in the Kitakami region, if you could even call it that. It's more like a roundabout surrounding a leisure center. You know what, go on, you can chuck the Loyal 3 in there as well. Even with their combined powers, I don't think they've got enough sauce to be smashing up cities exactly. Town level maximum. And again, that's a Gen 9 DLC sized town. These three are like the most non-legendary legendary Pokemon. A well-fed Onix would be causing more damage. The amount of destruction this lot is causing, I would say, is on par with a James Bond-esque character running through a favela market. May as well have the entire DLC lot here, because I'd say they're all relative enough. But Petron at least has a gimmick going for it. So it really depends, because if he wanted to, the people under its spell could go on a huge rampage and spread the virus. So potentially, maybe like a planetary level bit of destruction if it manages to spread far enough. But realistically, just not happening. And even if it did, it'd be more like another second-hand wave of destruction. So the amount of damage Petron itself could cause, I guess it could clamp you with the shell, give you a mean headache, do it near your ears where it's really loud. Perhaps ball ache if he catches you lacking, lurking in your toilet. You know, it's no raising the sea levels till all life drowns, but you gotta work your way up the ladder a bit, you know? You don't get to be ripping the fabric of space-time day one. Okay, you have to earn your shield a bit. It's gonna take a lot of 12-hour days between the sides of 2 clamps before you get up to the fabrics and all that. So I guess this is where I'm getting to the relatively harmless Pokemon by nature, but could still fly about and shoot off a few Shadow Balls and that. I just can't envision the Lake Trio having any kind of noteworthy destructive capabilities. They have one very specific use, and that one use is universal, calming down Dialga and Palkia. But still, it's not as if they're getting the job done through the collective tricep meet between them. At no point is that a physical graft. It's more like a silverback gorilla versus 3 zookeepers armed with tranquilizer guns. I reckon they'd have a hard time destroying their own goon caves, let alone towns. Celebi is one that really depends. You could argue nothing's stopping Celebi from traveling back to the 80s and convincing the man who almost launched Russian nukes based on a false alarm to actually retaliate.
Nah, trust me. They said press the button, do it. Come on, do it, or you're really gonna trust more the US military or the magic psychosis pixie who's just spawned in front of you.
He just convinced that guy to just do it, and then that's game. The butterfly effect, it's hard to power scale that one. Is Celebi itself destructively powerful, or does it just have a potentially destructive power? I think either way, the point's irrelevant, because if Celebi gets any funny ideas of getting a bit rowdy with the timelines, Dialga, Big Daddy Time himself, would just spawn in front of him, and Roar of Time Celebi into an assortment of herbs and spices could then alter the timeline himself, so Celebi never gets any distribution events or mystery gifts, never to be seen again. Jirachi is a very similar case to Celebi. Really depends on how its power gets used and its limits. Could someone find Jirachi and wish for him to blow up the universe? Because I kinda doubt it. I think even if you asked Jirachi to deal with a big enough Garchomp who's been bullying you down the road, he'd have to hit you with that Shenron.
Not sure about that one, brother. Can't be granting wishes beyond my max deadlift, can I?
I think Jirachi is limited in its destruction, wish or not. Apparently, Jirachi, he can't even create an item you wish for. The guy just teleports it. I could go get an Abra, go through the hassle of trade evolution for Alakazam. If I wanted someone to sort me out a wee little teleportation robbery, I'd just wish for the Alakazam at that point. At least he won't leave me for 1,000 years. Not a one-time use like Jirachi is. So it's not even some omnipotent manifester of wishes. He's really just this very difficult to find time-saving device. If you wish for 1 billion, it's just gonna vanish from a Federal Reserve while you've suddenly got an indiscreet mountain of cash, or like a very blatant giant Venmo transfer off Elon Musk. You're getting slapped with the biggest heist criminal charge in history. Now look, fella, you can either take the multiple life sentences, or we can dissect your brain in Area 51, studying you while you're strung up like RoboCop, trying to figure out how you've managed to teleport a bank vault across the planet, or even more unlikely, manage to get someone like Elon Musk to give money to someone less fortunate. Might even avoid prison on the insanity plea when you're defending yourself like, nah, it was a Jirachi. He gave me a wish. This little pixie goblin. He was here like 2 days ago. I didn't know he'd give me cash from the Federal Reserve. I just thought he'd magically add a few zeros to my ISA account. Meanwhile, Jirachi's gone. He's snoring for 1,000 years. You're deemed clinically insane. The destructive power on a single man's life potentially there would be world-ending. I can't exactly say Victini is useless here. It's an infinite energy source that's got to have some weight behind it alone. But even so, I don't think Victini alone could use that power to bring down civilization actually, or even a wide area. Although he could just manifest that into happening. Possibly another second-hand destructive Pokemon, because he's said to always bring victory. Anytime a legendary Pokemon goes rogue, they should just have one of these by their side to guarantee the outcome. Like Hooper in that movie, opening all these wormholes to summon the big boy legendaries and still lost, I think. I don't know, I haven't watched it. They're all alive though, right? So yeah. All he had to do was summon Victini along with him, and things probably would have gone his way. He was too busy glory hunting, going for the Dialgas and Palkias. He wasn't thinking about the meta. He should have got Victini in. Cresselia, the foil and only cure to Darkrai, casting his perpetual sleep paralysis spell on you. So God help you if you're on some no-name desert in the Ore region. Cresselia exists to make sure people don't get soft-locked onto Darkrai's wild ride, and that's kind of like its sole purpose. So it's great when it comes to recovery, but the most amount of destruction it's causing is smashing down that locked door to get into the inn, to feed that kid the reverse Rehypno it's got on his wings, give him that feather covered in smelling salts. And Darkrai is a menace, but again, his raw power is a bit debatable. Don't think he could even break down that locked door at the end. He'd probably softlock himself if even he didn't have the event item. Darkrai realizes he's locked himself out after he's just put that kid to sleep. He's kicking himself outside like, one time I forget to bring my DS to Toys R Us. It's even funnier to me. I'm imagining that scenario. He's forgetting he's a ghost who just ignores solid walls to begin with. Flies off to a GameStop to get the Members Pass event to unlock the door. Meanwhile, he's phasing through walls the entire journey, you know, because he's in a rush here, just to come back and unlock the door with a key, like a two-legged civilian. Yeah, Darkrai isn't a physical specimen by any means. Again, he's another one who could fly about uncontested, shooting off shadow balls and all that, but to me, it seems like a small town scale menace at the most here. He's a big ghostman. He's not going to be doing much physical. Type Null and Sil Valley both really go to show the success and failure of them being an Arceus clone. On one hand, it has no trouble changing into any type near enough at will, but if you asked him to super flat a small village, I reckon he'd take his time. Base Urshifu, he is a weapon, I'll give him that, but one Aiken, the Petulant set of clamps, is a weapon, but not a very ranged one. Mixed martial arts bearman, easily capable of mauling a village, but I wouldn't say his dojo is teaching him how to Kamehameha the moon anytime soon. Zarude, he hasn't got anything fancy about him, but that's exactly what makes him deadly. He's just a potentially violent chimpman. Be thankful its powers remain within melee distance. Destructive capability-wise, he's only taken out a small area at best, but what a display of violence it'd be. There'd be legends, myths about it for 1,000 years. They just couldn't give Zarude true legendary power. Society would invert on itself. Zoo exhibits would be showcasing youngster Joeys for all the Gurus to spectate. Diancie, and although it gets a nice boost with the Mega, this would really depend on how far its diamond manipulation powers can go, or more importantly, how far its grip strength goes, being able to compress straight carbon in the air into diamond. But with all the legendary heavyweight greats to compare to this one, it's gotta be a lower scale destruction mon. Even if you do think the grip strength is broken, what's he gonna do? Like, his hands are tiny. Do you know how long it'd take for him to compress a skyscraper? Well, he could go at it one brick at a time, yeah? As the physically weaker half of the Swords of Justice, I feel like I should segment them separately, but it's not even like to bully Keldeo for being the sideman he is. Even still, he's still slicing anything at once in half, but Cobalion and Terrakion just blatantly have so much more tricep meat on them to really have Virizion and Keldeo there on the same level of potential destruction. The Kalos Legendaries, they're tricky to go off of here, because when it comes to a little bit of the lore, you have to source it, and there's no source. No Z-game to give us a bit more depth to the legends, no third installment till 2025 kinda. Just gotta wait for Legends R to fill in the gaps 12 years later, hopefully. I don't want to say Xerneas has no gains at all, but a lack of destructive power, it kinda comes with the gimmick of being the god of life in Pokemon's world. I reckon he'd still do some damage, but more in the same way a moderately powerful ogre could do some damage to a medieval town forum, or a bull could do damage to the caster Jackass. For now, just Suicune, another Xerneas situation where you're not really disputing its overall power in a 1v1 sense, but it's more of a pacifist force. When it comes to destructive force, he's the one sending funding to charities to Syria and not sending the drones in. Suicune's 9 to 5 is roaming about purifying water across the world. You're not getting anything destructive out of the guy. Kinda goes against his mantras and all of that. Unless you're like either one of the two misters, Burns and or Frog, just casually pouring tanks of nuclear waste into rivers, and you're not really gonna see the biceps on a Suicune. I just struggle to see what the Reggies could really do mass damage wise. At least the core 3. At least with all the other trios, they can mostly fly or roam about the place to easily spread their destructive capabilities to share it with the land. This lot, they're really only gonna damage what's within their 7-eyed peripheral. Registeel's superpower is just being questionably hard, getting bricked up so hard, scientists claim you're not of this earth. Regirock has no brains or organs, literally just a sculpted piece of rock operating on Toy Story witchcraft. Regice though, he's got a little bit of beef on him. Things freeze just by going near him, so he could take out a small enough area. He's not reaching Kyurem ice feats anytime soon though. For him to do what Kyurem did in a 30-second cutscene, freeze an entire city, Regice would have to bust out a 10k marathon, hoping the whole place freezes around him. Koraidon and Miraidon. Now they'll be destroying anywhere that they want to. With all of them travel forms unlocked, a reptilian HM collection, no area inaccessible for them not to destroy. They can climb up any building, glide wherever they want. By default though, these two would have to be capped at like city-wide destruction at the maximum. I wouldn't even say they're that, they're more like a town. But especially if it's one of them soulless, extruded blender square towns that Paldea's full of. It seemed a bit too main character syndrome-y to let you ride about on a Pokemon that on the down low could split the fabric of time. Hey, you didn't know? You've been feeding sandwiches to Akatosh. That's the chief deity of the divines. Jesus Christ, read a book for one. These two are common in their own universe as well, so it's to be expected that they aren't anything too insane here. They may be rare to us, but legendary power-wise, they're just a bunch of civilians, just a pair of modded out Cyclizards. The Eon pair seem to be quite docile, but a pair of jets who can spout off ice beams, psy beams, any oral beam you could ask for. They really put their minds to it. They're taking out a small, well-knit community town at least. I don't rate Genesect that much. I reckon you'd need like an army of them to get any real shifts put in. May as well give a Kabutops a javelin and just see how far he gets before being smashed back into a stone. Team Plasma just gave this primordial broth bathing insect the Halo laser beam and expected it to be their Mewtwo, their big scientific breakout. Some Plasma lab coat tried Salvia for the first time and watched back-to-back Bugs Life and Iron Man 2 during the calm down. Thinks he's onto some kind of Nobel Prize in science. This isn't to say Genesect would get nothing done. It's still a literal weapon. The guy can even fly if it wants. With the attachments there, he'd be taking a good chunk off any area it's decided to fill in. But there's nothing too impressive here. Really, it's the cannon doing most of the work for it, and at some point, the ammo is gonna dry up there before needing to find a charging station for the SSDs he slots into his shoulder blade. Gotta give Cobalion and Terrakion their place as the muscle of the Justice Quartet. Collectively, they're destroying castles, overthrowing monarchies back in their day and all that. But you know damn well, it's Terrakion's juiced up deltoids that are doing most of the work there. So by far, Terrakion is the most destructively powerful out of the four. But Cobalion, he's not exactly sourceless either though with the raw strength. You'd have to be a bit of a hard man yourself to not only be the leader over a weapon built like a severely inbred pocket bully, but to also have this genuine form of Conqueror's Haki and makes any Pokemon obey and follow it. With the full lineup, they could be taking out cities, but even individually, at least out of these two, they'd be putting a solid dent into one. Melmetal is quite the wild card here. Strongest punch in all our Pokemon, including legendaries. That may still be true. Many Pokemon can throw a mean right hand as it is, so you'd have to assume Melmetal would be dumping skyscrapers in one bang if he's maxing out the machines the hardest out of every Pokemon. A liquid, and when it needs to be, a solid formed fella, I could only assume he can kind of change state like that. He's gotta be taking out big enough towns at least, because I don't know how you'd stop him. You could always like loosen the nuts on him and spill him, but if he really is slinking about at molten steel temperatures, no one could even touch the guy. You'd need like a Macargo tradie to withstand the working conditions at them temperatures. So yeah, there's one problem down. Now, how's the Macargo holding the spanner to get them nuts loose? I guess you just have to wedge it into his slug body, like shifting a candle into a birthday cake, and then you've got to somehow make him durable enough to tank the strongest right hand a Pokemon could be on the back end of. So look, just logistically, it's just one problem after another. It's probably less of a hassle just letting Melmetal destroy a town or two. Let him just have a city. Let him punch a skyscraper in here and there. Eventually, he'll just tucker himself out to sleep. Calyrex, while in the rider forms, it looks as though they can do a good bit of damage, at least compared to when the guy is naked. The signature moves here though, for the pair of them in lore, would be lethal. Ice Rider can spawn icicles that can smash holes into mountains. Shadow Rider can rain down a load of will-o'-the-wisps like meteors. Those moves alone could polish off a small town easily. Spectria and Glacier, I can only assume, are essentially the same here. I'd actually fear them less mounted with the Calyrex. They maintain a lot more of their aura not being mounted by the guy. Because at the end of the day, really, it's their moves. They're the ones doing it. They're still doing the heavy lifting. Calyrex just gets the clout chase off the back of them. The Tapu 4, as side legendaries, I'd say their power is capped a little bit, but I reckon they'd be able to destroy most of their respective islands, towns, and cities, given how small they all are especially. On top of that, if these four collectively can fend off over twice the amount of Ultra Beasts coming in, a multi-dimensional threat in themselves. Now, I'm not saying they could like one bang their islands, but give them a solid week or so. They'd have the places cleaned up. Actually, you can go ahead and shave that down to 12 hours with how linear Alola's routes are. Oh no, I'd have to go ahead and give them a solid week to destroy their island, because they'd be spending Monday through Friday spamming slogging through a week's worth of unskippable dialogue first. Regidrago is seemingly a bit more plain than its other Regi brothers, but it is said to have the powers of every dragon Pokemon, and if you consider all of that, really, it's gotta be a city-wide destruction at the minimum. Even further than that easily, if that's to be taken literal. Like, if it can fly at Garchomp speeds, produce slime like a Goodra, it's really everything you need from a dragon. Unless Deoxys, he's gonna morph his little DNA knobs into some kind of Oppenheimer test nuke. I just can't see him wiping out anything more than like a small island. And even then, him wiping out anything like that or a large city, he's gonna take his time for a little bit. And don't rush the guy. He'll get the job done. He'll take out a massive city at least. But that's where he's capping out, at least within one session of tomfoolery. It'd take him far too long to destroy a country to say he's within that tier. And I can honestly say the same for Mewtwo. Like, I don't care what he's shown to be doing in the animes and the movies and all that. He's not destroying anything past a city or a small island within a short enough time frame without taking a wee breather for a bit, going off the pitch for halftime, having a wee Capri Sun to himself. And I know that sounds off because these two might both be able to equally fight against other legendaries who they themselves could blow up the planet off a water gun, but it doesn't mean they themselves could do that necessarily. Like, I would say Deoxys Mewtwo being around the city to small island level, when you have things like Rayquaza being near enough planetary, it might not make sense, but them being near equal in combat, I'd say it's different. For me, it's like comparing Roger and Whitebeard in One Piece, stalemate fighting. Yet you wouldn't necessarily say Roger could destroy a whole country, even though Whitebeard absolutely could. Heatran would be making short work of any area, just near enough anything, because it's magma. If he's around his home territory, especially near his swamp, his big volcanic swamp, then he can just set off the local volcanic crater nearby to erupt. Signature move Magma Storm, maybe not the most ranged storm exactly, but even so, you see magma raining down on you in any capacity, you just have to assume, right, it's happening. Pestilence, Famine, and the other ones, they're en route. 10 minutes they'll be. Not got the grades to be getting accepted into heaven. You're just stuck in the end days with Heatran boiling your neighborhood. I can't see Raiku's storms doing much past the city. Good potential devastation on them, but nothing too stand out. You know how it is. You'd imagine it to be on par, if not stronger, than the Kanto Bird Legendaries, but you can't deny the guy's a lot more limited, mass destruction-wise, being on the more hind-legged side of Pocket Monster. I'm not even fully sure I can really justify this being above what's essentially a portable magma spawner. My only reasoning is, surely Raikou can do more damage than a Heatran. Like, the storms he's making, the thunderstorms I can only assume must be quite widespread enough. And also, Raikou, he's an Entei equal, and Entei is essentially a furnace compared to Heatran's air fryer. And I guess if I'm going with the boots on ground limit for Raikou, then it's only fair Galarian Zapdos is in here too. Being left on the ground though, it's not as much of a disadvantage as you'd expect. Sprinting 180 miles an hour, kicking massive lorries about, destroying them in one click kick. He's still a weapon, even if he has been cucked into being a land dweller like the rest of us. A very underrated choice for causing a little ruckus here is Volcanion. You never would have thought it, would you? A fella named Volcano Cannon would be keen for a bit of nationwide vandalism. The cannons there that he's strapped up with, they're not really for show. Objectively, he's just a Genesect who actually gets a bit of results. Because this one is destroying mountains clean. And from there, I could only assume everything else he can aim his two steamy main veins at. Because he is just a big boiler. Harsh way to go in the living conditions Volcanion would be making. Taking out rows of houses and neighborhoods in one spray, that's one thing, but you really have to go and make the place feel like a sauna. He's Volcanion, the humidity will take us out before his big urethra does. The other three weather legendaries, they can do quite a bit of damage. So you got thunder, tornadoes, sand. So like, I don't really know. What's Enamorous' whole deal? The god of spring. Its arrival signals the end of winter. Alright, sick. Yeah, no, I can't shoot thunder or anything like that. But I'll tell you what, mate. I'm a 10 out of 10 reminder to set your clocks back the hour. I'm gonna give it the benefit of the doubt and place it far higher here than I would like to. I'm gonna have to assume, at minimum, like the other genies, it's capable of casting tornadoes that just shift other houses with a bit of lightning power on the side. I've not even checked. He's probably got thunder on him. He must do. It's got a cloud on it. You got a cloud, mate. How you got a cloud not use fun? What do you expect? You got a cloud. So I'd give Enamorous a solid town to maybe citywide, proper localish scale level of destruction. Out of all the mythical gobbos who float about the place, I think it's fair to give Mew a lot more potential for causing a big old ruckus or two. Unlike the Jirachis and the Celebes, Mew can learn any move, and he even gives Mewtwo a bit of hassle on the regular. Look, movies, manga, canon or not, I don't think you're ever gonna see a Celebi going hand for hand against the big man Dialga. But if Mew, if he gets creative enough, then it's very easily taking out a city or two, because you'd have to assume, in lore, Mew can use every single move at will. He's not gonna show any respect for the sanctity of the 4 move slot limit. Can even transform into any Pokemon it wants. Now, I don't think it's as simple as looking down at a Google image picture of Groudon you got on your phone and showing it to him, and he's like, yeah, I think I can sort one of them out for you, brother. Don't worry, sit down. Be about 10 minutes, yeah? Take a seat. And then he could just burn the planet. But even then, he could still like freeform Garchomp to Machamp and maybe even a hybrid. You just see a Machamp with Garchomp's wings flying about the place, spamming Meteor Mash just because he can. Just keep the general public in a constant state of fear. You don't know what the fella's gonna do next. He'll be up there in the sky like, he's wagging his finger, he's using metronome again. You don't know what's gonna come down. He could either be raining magma from the skies, or he's about to screech very loudly. Regieleki said to be capable of producing an entire nation's electricity. Now use that power for evil, and he's easily causing the most casualties out of the 5 sub-Regis. Also, far and away, the fastest Pokemon around. I wouldn't be surprised if it can travel at light speeds like Mega Manectric and Zeraora apparently can, making Regieleki another sentient lightning bolt that would destroy everything uncontested. I'm gonna go ahead and say he can't do that though, seeing as he got done in by a bunch of ancient Romans, or someone who somehow managed to pin him down and inflate a dozen rubber rings around him. Got locked into them Shadow the Hedgehog power inhibitor rings. The guy's covered in them. Is how many did they manage to strap onto you before you fought them off? If any of those armbands had deflated at any point during those thousands of years as an idle static encounter, then maybe he'd be one of the most powerful surface level legendaries going. I'm not going to count these two as an extra 2 Pokemon to the whole collective number, since I've already done them both in the base forms. But even so, Gigantamax, I can't really ignore the 2 here. Comes with the territory for this topic, really. They're causing, at minimum, I think just by spawning, they're wiping off a city. And as long as that Dynamax energy doesn't wear off, if they're pinging for a good while, the nation's gone. Could easily end up being a multi-regional level destruction if they could just stay within this form. Would be steamrolling through you like it's the rumbling. Paldeas, treasures are ruined. And for someone to go out of their way to seal these 4 in solitary confinement with 32 collectible stakes across the land as bail, then they've surely gotta have some destructive beef behind them. Some ancient society had to deal with a lot of them like they're a fed up teacher, like, right, that's it, splitting you 4 up. Too chatty. Actually, no, you know what? You lot need to go to timeout. Yes, that's it. You 4 to the timeout shrines. Back in their prime, you know, before the feds got involved, locked them behind a side quest. They destroyed the main castle back then, nearly the entire kingdom. But you gotta consider a very long time ago, so I reckon adjusted for inflation, destroying an entire region back in the old times mustn't be too much time out of your day to smash up a kingdom back when people were making their houses with the same confidence I would a sandcastle. This all really depends on what kind of size you'd put a kingdom down to. Quite a broad spectrum to be playing with. It could be anything from Saudi Arabia to kebab. Each one of these has some form of cracked ability behind them. Ting Lu splits the earth open 160 feet deep like an unlimited fissure spammer. Sheen Pao can just snowbend 100 tons of the stuff. Wo Sheen drains any form of vegetation, and Shi Yu, he just swims through whatever he wants. You know, what's the pavement meant to do? Say no at 5,400 degrees. You'd get more resistance sticking your thumb in a tub of Vaseline than Shi Yu would swimming through concrete. What's he even doing sealed away in a tomb? Is he a bit cheap? He doesn't want to turn the heating off, does he? Just turn the hob on and swim your way out. You could even free your brothers this way. How'd they even get near him to slap him into a tomb to begin with? So overall, I'm heavily leaning towards Big Kingdom there. With all their powers combined, regional devastation at least, and individually still doing a huge amount of damage as long as they're within their element. As long as they're somewhere where they can actually use their powers. The Kanto and at least the airborne Galarian birds, I reckon they just fly about, spraying their element of choice, destroying anything ranging from city to maybe a small enough island. But I think their destructive capabilities max out at taking down skyscrapers and that. The only difference in destructive outcome between our Moltres and our well-greased up Charizard is just stamina. Moltres, it's got to have that demigod gas tank that a mortal like Charizard, it just can't compete with. But in terms of output, it's objectively not that different. Same goes for the rest of them really. Fire may spread more, but ultimately it's a very similar outcome of destruction, just with a different one of their elements. See, this is what I mean. I can't see Ho-Oh being too much different than a Moltres. Objectively speaking, zero difference really. But again, there's that stamina difference coming into play. A much more efficient Moltres, he'd get far more damage done. Moltres would soon find out the skill gap between side legendary and actual legendary. Ho-Oh could burn up a city like Moltres, but he'd still have another few left in him. He could go for another 12 rounds. Take out another small island on top of that, while Moltres is in the corner gassed out. The Genie Weather Trio would be complete menaces geographically. You got Tornadus, casting tornadoes, destroying buildings just from exhaling.
Yeah, now, mate, that's why you never exhale, mate.
Despised by farmers for how bad they leave the environment. So it's not just the houses they're taking out, but the harvest and all, that's going as well. Shelterless and starving. Next, he's gonna stand in front of your family, barricading you from the taps to get drinking water. Thunderous, now he's just as bad as the other one. He does everything Tornadus can do, while also causing forest fires from all that lightning it's just spraying off for no reason. Them two get into a heated debate. All that's left are charred remains. Landorus, bit of a wild card here, the least destructive since he pretty much exists to clean up after the mess that the other two have made. Revitalizes the crops. Well, that's a shame to the king of bountiful harvests or whatever he's called. Between this and the British Empire being nothing these days, Calyrex really does have no reason to exist. For this video, Landorus really comes down to how powerful and how much damage you reckon a harsh sandstorm could cause in a terrain not built for it. The guy could definitely ruin the landscape of anywhere it wants to if it were to use its powers for evil. You know, if its hobbies were to be nationwide menace as opposed to gardening. I reckon these three, as a collective especially, this is branching out into country level destruction. Just a plethora of unnatural disasters, tornadoes, thunderstorms, forest fires, sandstorms, a plague of famine across the nation if they wanted. Yeah, that's regional minimum, spreading into continental. I'm not fully sure how much Team Plasma enhancements have helped him pull this off, but hypothetically, if you got a strong enough Alakazam who could teleport the entire pirate ship across each individual city, I mean, Kyurem gets this done in like a 30-second cutscene. If he could teleport to each part of the map, then what, how many towns are there? He'd probably get it done in like 5 minutes. Without his Boxart boys, Kyurem, we all know, Husker the dragon he once was. I feel as though frozen Kyurem in his cave would need a pair of crutches just to get out and about, but even still, pulling off land-altering conquering feats, even if it needed the power of some epic gamer steampunk flying pirate ship to get some of the work done. He's at minimum city level, realistically regional tier, and if the pirate ship were fast enough, probably continental, because that looked relatively effortless for him. If he actually put a bit of chalk on his hands, he could probably frost the whole Unova region in half a day's graft if he's up to the task of going for a PR, a small continent easily. I know this really does depend partly on Team Plasma enhancements, but you can't deny the feat he's pulled off there in such a weakened state and all. You just know it's an all-time destructive feat when the DS busts out the big guns, a fully animated cutscene just for it. Lugia didn't strike me as, you know, the huge powerhouse, relatively speaking, but there's a reason Lugia had to be locked away, barricaded by a whirlpool HM. Too powerful for the public eye. If he locks in a bit, sets the motors on, he can easily create a large 40-day storm just by flapping its wings. Now just imagine, if he's conjuring up like a Sonic Adventure endgame level of floods from his storms, then Lugia, he can do some real damage. Entei, like a speed-running Groudon. Lugia, he's more like a softcore Kyogre. Kyogre's waterboarding the planet, but Lugia, he's more of a slow burn. He's more like a form of Chinese water torture. Terapagos is a bit tricky to scale here, but all things considered, I feel like things are pointing to it being a potentially continental tier threat. First off, face value alone can gain all the power of every types into one. He's the reason for Terra Crystals existing at all. As a slab of landmass, Paldea exists the way it does because of Terapagos is the sole Pokemon to take away the 0 on the Master Ball's win-loss record, capable of altering dimensions. Its powers are the reason why Paradox Pokemon exist in the present timeline. So it's really tricky here, because on one hand, this wee turtle, a fella that gets soft-locked if you flip him over on its back, could be anywhere from regional destruction to universal, the great crater of Paldea, potentially, all because of this funny-looking turtle. He may not have caused the crater, but at the bare minimum, he's the reason the whole place has been drenched in crystals. Gotta be full to the brim of land-ending power, all of which he just controls for himself. With that secret stash, he's been hibernating, keeping all to himself. I feel as though he could just absorb the whole lot if he chose to and blow up all of Paldea from the Stellar Form transformation cutscene alone. Although relative to the bird trio and its legendary dog counterparts, yeah, that's right, I said dog. But Entei being able to cause volcanoes to erupt just through roaring, that's gotta shift it up a whole entire tier of destruction. The guy is like a Heatran dog whistle. Raikou and Suicune being equals, I'm sure, are also capable of these low country, small island level feats. But it'd be more like extinguishing the damage Entei could cause. It's not Entei's fault that Ho-Oh had blessed him with the most destructive element out of the three. Bit of favoritism there, he knows what's up. The Pokedex even says it's not even any specific volcano. It's more of like a Russian roulette. Somewhere around the globe, we have 1,500 active volcanoes. There's probably 4 times as many in Pokemon's world. Hypothetically, if every single one of them just got triggered from Entei yipping, the planet's done. He's like a Groudon drought victory speedrunner. Incredibly easy too. The guy's barely got to get out of bed, just one roar. He could do that accidentally. It could be one bet off the Akka coming in. Hallen subbed off before he could get that one shot on target. He somehow not got yet. Shucks his Cronenberg at the wall because he was feeling exotic today. Shouts at the TV and off. There goes Vesuvius piping up again. That's the 5th time this year I've done in Pompeii. It's also tricky to scale Regigigas here, because I couldn't just see him rampaging about the place. Slow start and all, he's gotta pick and choose his temper tantrums a wee bit. You won't find he's exhausted or 5 pp of crush grip specifically on your house, car, garage, shed, and Nan. No, you just wake up with your house, car, garage, shed, and Nan. Exactly where you found him, except that we're surrounded by a harsh sandstorm because he's shifted your country to now be a part of North Africa. Regigigas, continental level of destruction. If he's got the biceps on him to tow an entire continent, then he's almost definitely capable of sinking one as well. Regigigas falls victim to the classic Nigerian prince email scam, and then a blind rage just flips Africa over. The Galarian dog pair, you know, without their legendary dog collar equipped, I don't really see what they're pulling off. They polish off a nice wee village or two, a nice bountiful harvest of toddlers from the feast on. But I reckon that's about it. But once you strap them up, they've got a stupid amount of wedge between them for a pair of enchanted Alsatians. I'd say very underrated strength between the two. They represent the yes, the irresistible force paradox. You know, the classic background. The unstoppable force meets the immovable object.
Pay-per-view.
One side cannot be stopped, the other side can stop anything. And Zacian can split the ocean in half with the sword equipped. Zamazenta can send shockwaves through entire mountains. That's not even mentioning that combined they can take down Eternamax, debatably the most difficult enemy you could ever manage to take down within the lore. 2 continental feats taking down a planetary enemy. I think it's fair to say they're quite high up here. Zeraora, an insane underdog here. One of the most forgettable ones here, you could argue. But he's getting by with the same physically impossible feats as Mega Manectric moving at the speed of lightning. So just the sheer force it has, moving at 270,000 miles per hour apparently. If you're gonna take that literal, it's gotta be shredding through anything it wants. The circumference of the Earth I'm seeing is near enough 25,000 miles. Even if you rounded that up to 27k just for the sake of it being 10%, Zeraora can lap the planet in 6 minutes. Let's just say 5 minutes, since it's 25k miles. It's another one of these technicalities for how it defies physics. About as much as an anthropomorphic creature seemingly can, could near enough teleport through buildings, slice them in half, then zip off to the next continent in a minute. You wouldn't even know Zeraora exists. And not because you forgot to go to Toys R Us one time to get the event. You just think God is raining down a plague of electricity as a well-deserved punishment for letting social media get this far. The only way it's not destroying countries is if its cardio is a bit bad. The gas tank is lacking a bit. Needs to charge himself up in 10-year segments just to expend like 5 seconds worth of power. Needs to consume 1 trillion calories a day just to maintain this destructive power. Zygarde, protector of the ecosystem, Earth's defender of any unnatural homunculi getting spawned. Obviously, its destruction would vary based on the form, but I'm gonna treat this as one collective entity. But when he's at 100%, at maximum slime, powerful enough to Rayquaza, its own regional pair. Maybe since it's out to defend the ecosystem, it's a bit of a hypocritical one, judging it on destructive power. But since he is the great equalizer legend for the physical embodiment of life and death, narratively speaking, would fold, lash the belt across the pair of Xerneas and Yveltal in a 2v1 handicap match with ease. So he must hold some insane power, which doesn't always, as I said earlier, correlate to destructive power in this case, but you can only assume at 100% it's got a pair of planetary leveling biceps on him if he so chose to use those biceps for a bit of evil. Plus, again, just narratively speaking, guardian of the ecosystem, he must be planetary on some level. Multi-continental minimum, and there's potentially far more power to come with a Legend Czar hopefully giving Zygarde the story it really needed. It was so needed. The guy's still a complete mystery near enough. It's like if Emerald never existed and Rayquaza, he's just some guy, except he doesn't live in a huge imposing aura-filled tower. He just hangs about in what may as well be a completely unfurnished secret base. Reshiram and his man Zekrom, I figured would be around large city to small island level of carnage to be had. But no amount of arguing you can type out can negate the almighty text box literally stated in lore to have the power to destroy the world. So right there, canonically and very casually stated to be planetary. The next step up from here, you're getting into like the cosmic DMT ego death vision territory of power or something freaky, which only a small handful of Pokemon can realistically be. So if Reshiram and Zekrom in base are already world destroyers, when they fuse with Kyurem, who's already arguably continental if you can lug him about the continent quick enough, I can only assume they too are just extra planetary. They just get the job done much more efficiently. Leave a fresh bowl of soup on the table. Head out for a second. Oh, you just gotta destroy the planet real quick. I'll just be a mo. Don't worry about it. The soup's still warm when they get back. There's a lot going on for Solgaleo and Lunana that I think you can't really deny is going to have to clock them into that cosmic-ish level tier, between absorbing light, traveling thousands of light years through wormholes, even down to some of their signature moves, at least in Solgaleo's case, having the same force as a meteor. So the pair of them, maybe speculating, maybe a reach a little bit here, but maybe a bit too much for us to handle if they just flipped one day. The two of them also being comprised completely of light, essentially an endless power stream for the pair of them. And if you do decide to take the move Sunsteel Strike literally, and you think Solgaleo can in fact slam at the force of a meteor, that's apparently the same amount of force of 20 million tons of TNT. Now look, this isn't really my kind of thing to be fronting. As a layman, 1 kilogram of TNT could destroy a small car, so it's sounding like Solgaleo can cause like nuclear scale damages, and he could keep doing it for a while, relatively easily as well. They also packed up the entire set of the Guardian Deities. They both take him 1v4 in their respective game version, and the Tapus are already fairly high high up on this video, for what they are at least. If each one of them could potentially take down their own small islands of Alola, then Solgaleo and Lunana, just through sheer brute force, would have to be cleaning up regions with ease. And then all of them supposed feats for a big portal-tearing gobbo to give him a good clamping down and a little nibble behind the ear. Base form Necrozma, I've got to throw him here as well. He would have to be a demon, managing to not only be relative to these two, but to quite easily overpower them in its lowest form. He also inadvertently created Z crystals like it's nothing just from traveling through wormholes. It was a byproduct of just him existing, essentially. If he's responsible for making the items needed for Pokemon to unleash their strongest move possible, and he wasn't even trying to do it as far as I can tell, they were just a byproduct of him jumping through wormholes, then it's gotta say a lot for his strength. Even if his greed, his lust, or absorbing light means that in theory, he could be folded by a powerful enough bug zapper. Another legend, which legends are, is very necessary to give him a bit more relevance than just monging out in Lysander's secret Bin Laden cave or whatever he does for the whole game. Yveltal you can make a very solid case for, but it really depends if you define absorbing life as a destructive force instead of just being like this ethereal superpower. It seems as though it's just one of the more physically imposing winged legendaries. At the very least, he could just turn on the switch for his life-absorbing powers. Just a smidgen of the old death going about. Just absorb enough where you yourself have got a full belly and everyone who's trying to stop you is far too drained to do anything about it. But I'm thinking about this as if Yveltal would just be draining humans' life force, which actually, the planet would probably be far better off. But you take everything into account of its powers though, considering it could just wipe out all life, as in plants, animals, the world would be done in no matter how you look at it. Every living cell could just be stomped out, leaving the earth completely barren. So because of his gimmick to just switch off the collective life of everything, it's really gotta be another unanimous bit of destruction there. In terms of raw power, I know you don't have to argue Rayquaza is the top don out of the Hoenn trio. So you may be wondering, what's this segment doing coming before the other two? But I'm just saying, in terms of world ending, it has the least amount of potential. If you were to ask me, could Rayquaza, Mega Form especially, conjure up a Hyper Beam beefy enough to pierce straight into the Earth's core and hit the comically large red self-destruct button that they're keeping down there? You know, if someone reputable enough said so, I'd probably believe him. I would be impressionable enough. I would Joe Rogan that and just not question it. But from what we know, Groudon and Kyogre are far more equipped to bring about the end of days. He can control the air pressure to dictate weather, but it's not as if he can, limit the amount of oxygen in our atmosphere or slowly turn off the gravity or anything freaky like that. Don't even think he could deplete the ozone layer, play the long game and accelerate global warming. This really depends on whether or not Rayquaza's ability is to negate harsh weather, or if it has such control over it, he could also cause the exact same conditions Groudon and Kyogre can. And I don't really know if he can do that. If that is the case, he's about as planetary strength as it's gonna get. But he's more of a neutralizer of destructive forces, despite being one himself. Eternatus, and especially the Max one. If the Gallopere didn't get a hold of their enchanted dog toys, it's an easy planetary win for Eternatus. Guy's like a claw machine specifically made to grab countries. And this is coming right after the Rayquaza segment, because objectively, Eternatus and Rayquaza, they're both just large powerhouses for this topic. They don't have a set gimmick for their destruction, it'd just be from brute strength. It's a bit of a close call, but with the giant form, I just think he'd have an easier time destroying the planet than Rayquaza would. The size advantage, the reach advantage, definitely. It's a bit hard to deny there. And its overall power, it's still a bit of a mystery. As far as I'm aware, in the main series, the only completely NPC Pokemon. Something stupid on the guy. Like what, 1,125 base power? Even without the max form, he's still a 65-foot tall psychosis manifestation with a seemingly limitless amount of energy. That's triple an origin form Giratina size. Relatively speaking, it's near enough the same size difference between an Electrode and Regigigas. He'd still get folded by a Mega Rayquaza, even if he's 320 feet long. But in my opinion, I'd say Eternatus is definitely destroying a planet in a much faster time. And then we loop back around to the Earth-destroying trio. So Rayquaza is stronger, and then Groudon and Kyogre are even more overpowered when it comes to spawning the end days. Again, somewhat dependent on just how harsh Rayquaza can make weather himself. Him having Groudon and Kyogre's exact powers all to himself, it seems a bit ridiculous, even for Pokemon. The size of Eternamax is one no legend can outweigh, but I'd have to give the size advantage to the ocean and landmass of the planet. Kyogre and Groudon's weapons of choice there. Either way, it's a unanimous bit of damage. Everyone's feeling that one. Two entities that destroy the planet almost effortlessly in comparison to everyone else. Like, all of their destruction just happens from existing. All they have to do is turn their jets on. You know, switch on their little neon gamer PC RAM RGB veins on them, and then let Jesus take the wheel from there. Rayquaza would at least have to churn out a hyper beam or two to get some work done. For these two, just waking up in the morning, making the appearance alone does the bidding for them. They're doing all of this while having the fight of their lives. About as multiversal of a threat as you can really get with Hooper. Travesty how unfinished Gen 6 was, because this had so much potential going for it. Because that Unbound form is a big old demon, a djinn. That's no Hooper, that's a baller. Unbound could just spread open one of his rings and bridge our dimension to Solitude. Could just randomly spawn mythicals and legendaries. I go for it. Just invite the time god over with no notice given for him. Catch him in the middle of the shower. It's his own fault anyway. He knows what's going to happen in the future and past. He knows this is going to happen to him. Should have showered earlier. I know there's that part in one of the movies where he just has every strongest legendary Pokemon whipped like he's a paid dog walker, taking the whole lot of them out for a stroll at once. I just can't see any situation where a creation trio member, they could just wag one of their nubs like, no please, and cease the whole situation. But even just being powerful enough to spawn them through these multiverse rings is an insane display of potential destructiveness. And even still, if Hooper can't control them, he can make them go berserk. The guy just shines a laser pointer in Dialga's eyes there. Does it enough times to make him angry enough to rage quit and break time forever. I'm almost thinking Hooper could be ranked anywhere here that isn't above Arceus. If he's able to spawn the creation trio from other timelines, and he can do this as many times as he wants with infinite amounts of universes, at some point, surely, he's gonna end up with a kamikaze Palkia or two. The ones with undiagnosed schizophrenia. And then coming out of that wormhole, that's only gonna send him straight over the edge. It's gonna prove him right. The schizophrenia was correct. He's gonna panic and switch off the fabric of space-time there and then. Even without the legendaries and all of that, he's carrying castles off just for the hustle of it. So if he just wanted to destroy the planet the grafter's way, wanted to get a few calluses on his hands, he absolutely could brute strength it as well. Genuinely are endless possibilities here. He could open a dimensional ring right where Nagasaki was about to drop and aim it wherever he wants. Infinite amount of universes to choose from. He could just rapid fire. Even if he just went for a straight shoot, straight fist fight with it, he could just spawn a wormhole that transports the exact moment and Ganu threw the punch that took over Reem's soul and aim it right in front of your face. And he could do that 6 times at once as well. And if he gets a bit greedy, he does it too many times, and he'll create a space-time distortion rift that destroys any area they were summoned to anyway. So either way, it's inevitable. Hooper is destroying the fabric of time and space in some form. Necrozma, you know, once he's well fed, once his clamps have rewarded him with a legendary Boxmon to consume, he's just broken. No matter how you look at it, mentally, physically, starved of light, you know, he's very depressed, the guy. He's just a broken fella. Hungers for a bit of the light. He doesn't just take his vitamin D tablets, he injects them between his toes, crushes them with his flat, polygonal palms, and finds a way to snort them. A limitless destructive force. The most limitless, with several limitless destructive forces seemingly in this video. Even with just the one fusion, it's a universal threat there, capable of burning the world with lasers, absorbing all of the light, tear open a cheeky little wormhole. Hey, no one's shot in here. Yeah, I saw you taking them pills earlier. I won't tell if you don't. Then on to the next world to destroy. Ultra Necrozma. I'm struggling to even really process all of this. I didn't even play Ultra Sun and Moon, okay? This is a lot to take in. Can barely even look at the guy without sunglasses on. There's nothing in his way from just having a little nibble on a few stars, scran a big dipper here and there, absorb all the light in the galaxy he's currently in, and when he hungers for more, just changes lanes real quick, just slip into another dimension there, just merge in, you know, put the signals on, rinse and repeat until either he explodes, causing the inevitable heat death of the multiverse, or the blood pressure gets a bit too much and he passes quietly away in his sleep from cardiac arrest. Gotta be a lot of cholesterol in them stars. Can't be good for him. He's also quite a bit spicy, just a little bit, you know, a soft little temperature of 10,000 degrees, you know, just under double of a Chiyu. Melt even trying to touch it, even going near it. I think if you even looked at the guy for too long, you would melt. You're cooked, no matter what situation you're really in with it. He also, fires lasers from every inch of his body, 18-mile radius on them lasers. The guy's also stupidly huge. He's no Eternatus now, but he's still around 3.5 Great Carlies. Some people even debate where it stands against Arceus be in the top 1. And I'm not surprised. With the accolades he's got behind him, the CV he's showing off. Because Necrozma, he might just no-sell it. He might not care. He could be from a universe where they have their own Arceus, who's got quads with striations in a 1v1 against our quadless Arceus. Ultra Necrozma wouldn't care if you float about with your little 24-karat onion ring, calling yourself a Yahweh. The entire universe, space-time, a Keyblade, out of connects. Ultra Necrozma doesn't care what he's made. Arceus in that situation would absolutely get his jaw spun and his big belly button ring welded to a lamppost. Space, time, and everything nice. No, wait, that's not what Giratina does. Antimatter, that's Giratina's one. Hard to dispute these being in the top 3. Even with Necrozma being as so ultra as he claims. She is, to be fair, I can't argue that. But the thing there is, Necrozma only gets to jump about dimension because the big men upstairs, and in one case incredibly downstairs men, allow it to happen. Very progressive of the gods of Pokemon to be this lenient on interdimensional travel. At no point did they stop and go, illegals crossing our borders. Ooh, not today, sunshine. That interdimensional rubber dinghy's getting popped, man. Arceus at any moment could have just deported him straight back to the land of Buzzswole. Seen the odd time people speculate the creation legends would hold 0 jurisdiction over him, but if you ask me, the universe kinda works like a farmer's many acres. You trespass on the property.
Yeah, you don't get too between the eyes, boy.
Ultra Necrozma wants to come into our dimension. If one of the Creation 4 Legendaries do something to delete the universe, Necrozma's going down with it. He won't even know it's gonna happen. He won't just spawn back in his realm. He just won't exist anymore. He seems to think if the ship goes down with him, he just get chucked out the painting, go, ooh, jump back in, have another crack at it. The 3 here, you can't really dispute. You need all 3 to exist. I'd maybe give Giratina the silver medal here, actually. The most destructive, just from his temperament alone. You know, he's the bad boy of the crew, Penny. But like, if any one of these switches off for just a second, it's nighttime for them, and it's nighttime for the universe. Look, there he is, the great Lingarius. Not only is he canonically and unpredictably known by Dr. House, he's also canonically and very predictably the endgame of omnipotence, all of the Omnis in Pokemon's many universes. You can't really beat God, can you? You know, that's fair play there. But the dealer's done 21 there, you can't do much about it. I did genuinely forget, or maybe even never questioned to begin with, the Arceus we see is just a slice of the real big man himself, an avatar. So it's not universe breaking that he can be captured in the same device you used to catch a rat 2 minutes into your adventure, and that its base stat is lower than several other Pokemon since him. One of these days, he may just have to patch that. He might just have to send down a bigger slice of himself, one to remind you all just who the big daddy is. 720. It's time for an update. Arceus in 4K this time. 1440 base stat, purely just a mog. Ultra Necrozma, if anything. All of that really just goes to show just how impossible to reach Arceus is in power. Don't really see how that could change ever, unless maybe this is the Christian Arceus and we should have all been believing in Islamic Arceus this whole time. For Arceus to be topped, reality must also be topped. Unless at any point some ancient scriptures are discovered proving that God themselves also has their own God, making current God actually more like a Jesus Christ sub-legendary, and Jesus Christ more like a one-time only in-game static encounter, then Arceus isn't going anywhere near away from the #1 spot here.